It is said that according to Mark 14, that he accepted worship from others. This is indeed very strange because the word worship sometimes is used to refer to intense love. And I am sure that the mayor of Champaign is addressed in the meeting, your worship as well. If indeed Jesus claimed to be worshipped and it was understood that he's an object of worship, the pages of the New Testament would be full. But what we find that he himself worshiped God, he fell on his face and prayed to God, and prayer is petition from the infinite, from the finite to the infinite. Some people raise the question about telling the Jews when in John 8, before Abraham was, I am. First, the word I am itself does not really carry the connotation usually given to it, that this is the same term used in Exodus, because the Greek term used in both cases is not the same. Number one. Number two, the existence before Abraham can be understood in view of the Bible itself. In 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 20, it speaks of Jesus as one who was destined before the foundation of the earth. In Acts chapter 2, verse 23, the same thing speaks and uses the exact term for knowledge of God. So yes, Jesus, you and me, and everybody else pre-existed in the foreknowledge of God, to use the biblical term, before even the foundation of the earth. Some say, but why did the Jews take stones and try to pelt him with it? Well, it is not that he said, I am God. And obviously, if a human being walking on earth say, I am God, people would say he's crazy and they would leave him alone. But I think the possible reason, as some theologians suggest, is that he healed the man on the Sabbath. And since the Sabbath was ordained by God, he made himself equal to God by healing the person on the Sabbath. That's why he had an eloquent response to them that the Sabbath is made for man, not man made for the Sabbath. And the other thing that seemed to have offended the Jews as well is that they adored Abraham, and by putting himself ahead of Abraham, in fact, they were offended, and that can be found in John 8:53, which shows clearly that they didn't like the notion of putting himself above. In a few minutes that are remaining, I'll just even go beyond what Jesus claimed, because there is no claim really that is conclusive. Nowhere does he say, I am God or the Lord. And this matter should be crystal clear in matter of divinity, just like when God spoke to Moses, I am God, there is no Lord but me. You don't need any ambiguous statements when it comes to teaching people the basics of their faith. But some people who refer to the statements made about Jesus, I must say in the first place that these are not binding on us. We don't believe that those disciples were prophets receiving revelation from God, contrary to the Christian belief. But even if you look at them, and of course their statement would be less authentic than his own statement, and none of his statements really made that irrevocable and clear claim. The question of Son of God we talked about. The question of baptism, for example, that appear in Matthew 28. We find that this is written in manuscripts beginning from the 4th century, when the doctrine of Trinity became already official. One of the historians of the church, some of the historians of the church, noticed that Eusebius, the famous historian who died in 340, referred to the same quotation in Matthew 28:19, 18 times without using the so-called Trinitarian baptismal formula, which indicate, of course, it came later in his writing after the Nicene Council, which shows the great political factor that led to Trinity being adopted. This is another issue about Constantine and his role in this. Even in the New Testament itself, we find numerous cases where the baptismal formula did not include the Trinitarian form, only in the name of Christ. You find that in Act 2:38, 8:16, 10:48, and 19:5. The question of Jesus being manifest in the flesh, the last point I understand I might have time for, which is found in 1 Timothy 3:16. You find again in the Revised Standard Version of the Bible that it does not talk about Christ, but about God. Actually, it says, he who was manifest in the flesh, not that God was manifest in the flesh. And one of the things, since Dr. Craig keep claiming that the Bible is authentic, everything is authentic, there is no disagreement, I beg to disagree with you, Dr. Craig, because in the British Museum, in Codex A, it was found that one of the Greek manuscripts that originally written ho, H-O, which means which, that they found with analysis that there is a different ink that added the word S, the letter S to ho, and hos means God, and that totally changed the meaning. And this is only but one example of many of the various editorial work that was done in the scriptures. I don't know if I still have time, 30 seconds. In that last 30 seconds, I must say, with all due respect to you, Dr. Craig, and I appreciate your presentation and your faith and your ardent view to present it, that you could not present a convincing statement about why Trinity is better, nor could you make any effective rebuttal that Islam has inadequate concept. In fact, Islam does have a morally sound and instinctively acceptable and innately truth concept of the true monotheistic faith. Assalamu alaikum.